our main methods for combating anti-Semitism are public exposure and education. So public exposure is to track the statistics, to track what's going on online, to track what's being said in mainstream political forums, and to highlight trends in discourse there which have an anti-Semitic nature or appeal to anti-Semitic tropes. And we do that through our regular report on anti-Semitism in Australia. We do it also through regular articles in the mainstream media and online. And also just in conversations with people in politics, in other civil society organisations, other ethnic and faith communities. And we find that there's a commonality of concern with many other people about some of these trends, because racism is rarely just confined to one group. When one group is targeted, it's usually only a matter of time before others are targeted as well. And so by exposing it, highlighting it, we make people aware of it, and we also find that there are alliances that are developed quite naturally by people who have similar concerns to us. So that's the first method. The second method, education, and we try to do that through programs that are directed more at the state level or the territory level. These are programs that introduce people to the history of the Holocaust, to Jewish history more generally, to demystify Jews and Judaism from the majority population. And that can be through Jewish museums, through programs in schools, and through general talks, podcasts, and so on. So those are the two main ways. But there is a third way, of course, and that it is important because it has to be there as an ultimate recourse if there is a persistent and willful campaign of hatred directed against Jews, and that's the legal framework. And we have resolved quite a few cases in the Australian Human Rights Commission and in the various state anti-discrimination commissions that are directed against combating vilification of Jews in public. Usually these cases are settled at the conciliation stage, and often even before it gets to a formal complaint to these bodies, simply because most people, even when they express prejudiced views, don't like to think of themselves as being prejudiced, and certainly don't like to be presented as prejudiced. So we get these things resolved informally most of the time, but there have been occasions when we've had to go all the way to a full court hearing. It's been a while since we've had to do that, but that was done in the early 2000s. It involved two cases that we brought through the federal court. One was against a neo-Nazi and Holocaust denial website run out of Adelaide, and another was against an ex-school teacher in Tasmania who persisted in handing out grossly anti-Semitic leaflets in people's letterboxes. And both those cases were successful, and we were satisfied with the outcome, but it took many years to go through the courts. And of course, it's a slow process. It's as the law always is, and it's really only a last resort if all else fails. We much prefer to go through informal means or through education or public exposure to try and get people to change their behaviour. And by that, I just mean, stop vilifying Jews. And that has been, for the most part, successful. And we've had I don't want to go through particular cases, but we've had quite a number of successes, particularly online and particularly with some of the social media platforms, in becoming more aware of the prevalence of this sort of discourse and the potentially violent and lethal impact that this discourse can have if it's simply allowed to flourish. And there's a greater self-consciousness now, I think, by these platform providers than there was in the past about these matters, and a number of other matters as well, and a greater sense of seriousness of purpose in the companies that run these platforms in being good corporate citizens.